Hi, do you want to run a CDN on top of Kubernetes? Then please take a look at my project. My name is Tomasz, and I'm the developer of the EdgeCDN-X platform. This platform is fully open source, built on top of Kubernetes using CNCF technologies, and it helps you to run and orchestrate and configure a CDN. So what is a CDN? CDN stands for Content Delivery Networks, and it is caching content from a content origin in multiple locations. Certain content caches are placed across the globe. In this example, we have 4 of them, one in the US, one in Europe, one in Australia, and one in Asia. And our content origin is running in somewhere Africa. So when a client wants to get content from this content origin, instead of reaching out to the content origin, the request will be redirected to the cache server closest to the given client. It is mostly happening based on geolookup. So the client accesses this content on this cache endpoint. If the content is present, he gets served with the content. If the content is not present, then the cache will make sure that the content is downloaded first from the content origin. The content origin sends the content, including cache control headers, and the cache will store this content and then serve it to the client. And if there are multiple clients from the same location accessing the same content, they will be served from the cache directly. This way we save bandwidth between the cache and the content origin, we offload the content origin server, and at the same time we improve the user experience for the user because the content gets served faster. So some core features which we would like to mention. The routing engine can route you to different locations based on geolookup, based on your IP address. It can also route you based on IP prefixes, so you can specify a certain prefix to be routed to a certain region or certain IP, a certain node. You can store your content in different types of caches. For instance, if you have a content that is often accessed and very popular, you can store that in a RAM disk, and something which is less used, you can store in an NVMe or HDD disk. The platform supports S3 origin types, and you can also serve private content using URL signatures. And of course, to make sure that the routing engine will only route you to nodes and to caches that are online and serving content and healthy, there are active health checks implemented. All right, so take a look at the demo. As I mentioned, I have one deployment running on Civil Cloud. So take a quick look at the demo. I have a demo deployment running on Civil Cloud. This demo is running 2 locations, 2 servers. One of them is running in Frankfurt, the other one is running in New York City. Our control plane and DNS is running in Frankfurt as well, which is serving the routing endpoint, which is based on core DNS, which I mentioned already. So what we have here, we have a spec for our regions, which is called location. It's a CRD in Kubernetes, and it defines basically that the Frankfurt 1 region is running 2 node groups. One of the node groups is running SSD caches, another one is running HDD caches, and both node groups have one server running, so total 2 on different IPs. And I want all the requests based on GeoIP that have a continent code set to EU or Africa to be routed to New York City. And the other location, very similar setup. I have rest of the continent codes basically routed here. And please take a note, there's also a fallback locations to Frankfurt. So in case this server in this region is not up, that means there would be no live and healthy servers running in this region. In such case, the requests coming from, for instance, North America or South America to be routed to Frankfurt instead. So on the left side, I have my GitOps repository ready, and I'm going to deploy this service. I'm going to deploy a service with a name youtube.demo.cdn.edgeCDN-X.com. This is the domain name which will be routed there. It is a cache type SSD, so all the content for these servers will be stored on SSDs, and it is using an static origin pointing to tbotech.sk. So, roll out service. Once I commit this, a few seconds it appears in our ArgoCD endpoint, and if I sync it down, the service gets rolled out. We get a certificate automatically using a cert manager, and the service is configured in each region, including the routing endpoint. So let's take a look at the details. The ingress is still rolling out. So we have a service deployed on our Kubernetes endpoint. This one is, please bear in mind, this one is rolled out on your CTC1. So this endpoint is being configured. It is configured with the service of an external name called tbotech.sk, and there is an ingress which is still being configured. In a few seconds it will appear healthy. Maybe we need to refresh the page, maybe not. There you go, it's healthy now. So this ingress right now is exposing this service and will be routing the request to the backend u2demo.democdn.edgecdn.com, which is basically essentially this service. So that means the request hitting this endpoint will be forwarded to tbotech.sk. There are a few certain annotations in the platform, in the configuration, which will make sure that that the content will be cached. There you go. That the content will be cached in an SSD, and that cache is defined on the server itself. So let's go to tbotech.sk. The website opens pretty fast, and if I take a look at the source code of the website, you can see that all kinds of content instead of tbotech.sk is coming from ytdemo.democdn.edgecdn.com. This is basically the service we just rolled out, and this WordPress website is configured to serve those content from this domain name instead of the default one, the tbotech.sk. Let's take a quick look in the network tab. So on a refresh, you can see, let's take a look at this file, for instance, the bootstrap CSS. So this file is coming from this domain name, and we get routed to this IP address. And I can tell you that this IP is actually the one which is running in Frankfurt, since I'm based in Europe. And I get also some additional headers, which is telling me under which key this content is stored on the cache, and whether it was a cache hit or a miss. And in our case, it was a hit. So if I take a look at the logs, what's happening under the hood, let me just resolve the domain which we just created. And we can clearly see that's the IP address which we get back from our routing engine. And what is actually happening under the hood, my core TNS basically sees my source IP, and my IP is based in Europe. So that's why I get routed to Frankfurt C1, and the Frankfurt C1 server is up and running, so that's why I get served with this IP address. If I add a subnet, I haven't shown you, but I mentioned that you can also route based on prefixes. So New York City destination has a prefix defined, which is 855020.0. This is actually a Spanish prefix, a random Spanish prefix, which is forced to be routed to New York City. So if I do this very same request, including this prefix, specified in the request itself, you will see that a prefix was matched in the request, and instead of Frankfurt, which I would normally be forwarded to, I get forwarded to New York City. And there's one more demo I would like to show you. If I find one of my caches in Frankfurt, and I kill the cache temporarily, I just restore the pod. and I wait until the health checks fail. So there you go, I got an update. That means that the health check was unsuccessful. If I do the request again, you will see that I would normally be routed to Frankfurt 1, although the node N1 is not healthy. So I'm going to fall back to the next node in the same region, although there are no nodes available. So in such case, I'm going to be fallen back to New York City 1. So instead of the IP which I got previously, I get a different IP. So now if I do the same request again, in between the node came back again and is healthy now. So if I do the very same request, I get a different IP because the endpoint in Frankfurt is now up and running. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. This was the EdgeCDN-X platform running on top of Kubernetes. I showed you basically all the basic features which we have. I've showed you how the routing engine works. I've showed you how to route the service. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, send me a message. Feel free to join a newsletter and follow this page. Thank you.